Good morning, C-Suite for Christ. I'm David Cooks, and I am so excited to speak with you today. How's everybody doing this morning? I'm assuming you said great. Well, I think it's a great time to be alive. We've got challenges today, but life is always full of challenges. But with challenges comes victory. And so I'm going to talk to you today about going from paralysis to purpose. I wrote a book called Getting Undressed: From Paralysis to Purpose. And I'm going to walk you through my journey, a portion of it anyway, of going from paralysis to purpose. And I want to focus on three aspects of that I think can help anyone in whatever they're dealing with. And that is perspective, perseverance, and partnerships. I was 13 years old when I gave my life to Christ. I wasn't really sure exactly what that meant, but I had seen how the power of God and the Spirit of God had transformed the lives of my parents. And I saw how they were walking in a newness of life, so to speak. And I was like, you know what? I want to serve that God. And so I didn't know all of what that meant and what that was going to entail, but it was clearly the best decision of my life. And so I want to lay that foundation as I talk about what happened after that. You see, I was 15 years old. I was born and raised here in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And I loved the game of basketball, just like any kid, in the city does. I didn't have aspirations for being a professional athlete or anything like that, but I did want to play for my high school. And I just loved the game and played it and gave it everything I had. Well, I was a sophomore at Marquette High School here in Milwaukee. I was 15 years old. It was Friday, October 19th, 1979. I remember it like it was yesterday. And I woke up that day. I had a little discomfort in my back. I didn't think much of it. I had just gotten a physical a week prior to that. And in that physical, I was given a clean bill of health. And so I thought I was good. Woke up that day, felt back was hurting. Athletes feel that kind of stuff all the time. I went to school, took my exams, played basketball that day. I wasn't myself, but I still was able to do some of the things that I like to do on the court. I thought I slept funny or ate something, didn't think much of it. Went home that day. I laid down and, back then, Robitussin and laying down were two of the remedies for like everything. Just go lay down and you'll feel better when you wake up. Well, I laid down that time. And when I tried to get up that day, I nearly collapsed and I had to hold on to, there was a table on the side of the bed. And I remember holding on to that and calling for my parents. And I'm sure they heard the urgency of my voice and they came running in. And we ended up going to the emergency room. And it took a few hours, but eventually they saw me and they discovered that a blood vessel had erupted on my spinal cord. I'm 15 years old. I'm 3 days from basketball tryouts. Basketball tryouts were the following Monday. And I find myself in the hospital. And now I am a T6 paraplegic and a wheelchair user. That was not the abundant life that I signed up for when I received Christ into my life at age 13. I had seen him work and do great things in people's lives, and I was expecting to have a life that was going to be full and vibrant. And to have this happen kind of was unusual. I didn't understand it. I didn't know what was going to happen. And I was actually faced with the situation then on, do I serve Christ now because I know that he's a healer and that he can heal me? Or do I serve him because I love him and believe in him? And we'll get back to that later on in the story. So I didn't mention it, but let me just talk a little bit about, I wrote the book. I think I mentioned I wrote the book called Getting Undressed: From Paralysis to Purpose. And we all get undressed. We all get changed 2 or 3 times a day. And the changing of our clothes really represents a new beginning. The things that we take off are the old things and we put on new clothes, which is an indication of where we're going. The Apostle Paul said, take off the old man and put on the new man. And so even spiritually, we change our clothes. And so getting undressed is something that we all do. It's a rebranding. It's a starting over. The buzzword now is pivoting, and getting undressed is a part of pivoting and changing. And so, but for me, getting undressed had a little different meaning. For me, getting undressed was about independence. It was about returning to some normalcy, some normalness, easy for me to say, in my life. And let me explain what I mean. I'm 15 years old and I am at the rehab center. I leave the hospital, go to the rehab center, and a couple things happened there that were really interesting. Um, the first thing that I realized when I got there was that I began to go down the aisles or the hallways rather, and I began to see that there were people there whose situations were significantly worse than mine. I had no idea that there were people in the world that were suffering the way they were and were literally fighting for their lives. I didn't know what my situation really was, but I definitely knew that it wasn't that bad. And in the process, I get to my room and I meet this guy named Tony Otters. Tony is a quadriplegic. Tony had suffered a horrific diving accident. He's a bigger guy, about 6'5" or so, and he was a quadriplegic. He had very little movement from the neck down. And he was one of the most upbeat people I had ever seen. I mean, I didn't know a lot of people in wheelchairs or anything at the time, but his attitude was just so positive. And he was talking about going home and getting back to school. And eventually he wanted to become a doctor. Well, I was with most of that, except the doctor thing, because I didn't see how he could do it. He had very limited use of his hands and all that. But what inspired me about him was how he just never wanted to give up on anything. And meeting Tony Otters changed my life. The T6 paraplegic part of my life, or the spinal aneurysm, was life-changing. But meeting Tony Otters changed my life. And this is what I mean. Meeting Tony Otters changed my perspective on things. I began to understand that I didn't have it as bad as I thought. When I saw him, and I was like, he would probably give anything to be able to do some of the things that I could do. And so my perspective on my own situation changed when I realized that there were others whose situations were worse than mine, and they wished they could do some of the things that I could do. From that moment on, I was like, you know what? I think we can handle this. I think we have this. And it's interesting because in the midst of this, people always ask me, how did you deal with that? You're 15 years old. And how did you make it through that? Well, there are things that we say, and they weren't cliches for me. They were real. I had faith. I had a family that supported me, and I had some friends that loved me through this and helped me get to the other side. But let's talk about the getting undressed thing, because that's really part of this too. Tony motivated me to work hard and to believe that I was going to be okay and believe that I was going to make it. And that perspective change was everything, because you see, perspective drives your performance in any area of life, whether it's business, whether it's your faith, whether it's your family. How you see things, what you believe, will determine what you do and how you do it. And so I remember the day they taught me how to get dressed, because you had to relearn everything when you go in there. The bathroom change, how you go to the bathroom changes, how you shower changes, how you get dressed changed. So you had to relearn everything overnight. And so I remember the day they taught me how to get dressed. I mean, what a wonderful day that was for me. It was amazing. I was like, man, I learned how to get dressed. And it was like, I'm on my way. And so every night, though, when it was time to go to bed in rehab, there was always a nurse or someone there to help me get undressed and get in bed. Well, one of these nights, no one came. There was some kind of emergency or something on the floor, and no one came to help me get undressed. And so I had a dilemma. I had a choice to make. Do I sleep in my chair, or do I figure out how to get undressed so I can get in the bed? Well, I chose the latter. So I tried to get undressed. And the first thing I did was I tried to undo what I did to get dressed. That didn't work. I struggled and struggled. It took me like an hour to kind of figure it all out. And eventually I got undressed. And that was the beginning of the ending of my time in the rehab center. See, Tony Otters taught me so many things. One of the things he taught me is that you can never accomplish a lot with a negative attitude. And secondly, you've got to put in the work if you want to succeed, if you want to make change in your own life. And so I remember on the way, when I got to the rehab center, the doctors told me, you'll probably be here about 6 months or so. And I was like, man, that's a real long time. I was 15 years old. I was kind of a good looking guy, kind of like I am now. And, and I was beginning to like girls and they were liking me. And so, I wanted to get back to school. Well, we were at an all boys school, but, after school, I did what I had to do. So I just wanted to get out. Well, it turned out that on Christmas Eve of 1979, approximately 2 months after going into rehab, I was discharged 4 months in advance. And a lot of that had to do with perspective, which drives your performance, and also perseverance. Sometimes you have to just not quit. In the face of adversity, in the face of difficult times, you've got to keep going and keep going. I'm going to talk about perseverance a little bit more just in a moment, but I want to tell you about Tony Otters, because sometimes I forget to tell people this. You know what? Tony Otters went on to become a doctor, an MD. Again, it blows my mind. I remember getting a call from a doctor who had read my book, and he said, you probably wouldn't know this. And I said, I'm not sure what you're talking about. And he said, well, Tony Otters was my classmate at the University of Wisconsin-Madison in medical school. And he said he was an amazing guy and he was extremely bright and he went on to be a great doctor. And so it's interesting. What you believe does matter. And what you put your focus to and your attention to does matter, in spite of the odds, in spite of what society may say or the doctors may tell you. What you believe does matter, and the effort that you put in also does matter. Perseverance is very important in anything we do. The Apostle Paul said that man should always pray. All right, don't cease from praying. The scripture also declares that we should not grow weary in well-doing, that we should do that because eventually we will reap a harvest. There is a perseverance, there's a stick-to-itness, there is a commitment that is made that helps a person go from a difficult place of paralysis. And we all face paralysis in different forms, psychologically, financially, in our relationships, etc. COVID-19 has left us all paralyzed in some form or another. It has inhibited our ability to move and do things. Well, the question is not why, but how can I move from this place? How can I learn from this place? Because you know what? COVID-19 or having a spinal aneurysm at the age of 15 does not eliminate my purpose. It does not eliminate the passion I have in life. But what it does do, it may make you reflect. It may make you have to take a different route, have to redirect yourself. It's something like that. But never quit. Never quit. As difficult as it becomes, you can't quit because your purpose, you fulfilling your purpose, there are people that are depending on you to fulfill your purpose for their lives. And you may not even know who they are. When I was 15 years old, I had no idea that I eventually would become a businessman, become a basketball coach, coach at Duke, coach USA basketball, impact lives literally all over the country. I had no idea. Had you told me that at age 15, I would have been like, whatever. I wanted to be a businessman. I did some of that. I knew that, but I didn't know the extent of the purpose for my life at that time. It's a journey. We all learn that. So perseverance is very important. I'll tell you a story I mentioned Duke basketball. And I remember when I went to Duke University to get my master's degree in business, I wanted to be a part of the basketball program. I went to Duke University. I didn't know Coach K. I didn't know anybody there, but I thought I had been fortunate enough to get connected with some basketball people back here in Milwaukee. And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to go because I want to see if I can be a part of this program and contribute to the program. Well, I went to the office to meet Coach K, and first time I went, they told me he was on vacation. I said, okay, that's fine. Back then we used to leave messages for people on little pink pieces of paper. Some of you may remember that, and put it in the mailbox. And so I went back a second time. The second time they said the same thing to me, like, well, he's on vacation. And I'm like, well, how much vacation does this guy get? I mean, I know he's like a coach and everything, but does he work? And so I went back a third time. That third time I go back, there's another guy sitting in the office, and his name was Tony Lang. You know, I don't know why Tonys are in my life, but this Tony guy was here, because here comes Tony Lang. And so I go in, and he says, hey, aren't you the guy from Wisconsin? And I didn't know how to respond to that, because I mean, I was from Wisconsin, but I don't know how you know me. So I kind of, what do you mean? And he said, well, I remember seeing you in Florida, in Tampa, Florida, in St. Petersburg specifically, where you were coaching an AAU team from Wisconsin. And he said, you had Damon Key and Jim McIlvaine and Silas Mills. You had some really good players on there. And I love the way that you've interacted with your players. Are you here to help us? And immediately I'm like, well, yeah, I am that guy from Wisconsin. Absolutely. And yeah, I hope I can be a part of the program. Well, I switched my conversation from Tony to Donna, who was at that time Coach K's executive assistant. And I said, well, is Coach in town, or is he here? And she said, well, he's not available. Oh, she didn't say that he was on vacation or that he wasn't here. She said he was not available. That was different than I heard before. Perspective always is everything. How you hear things becomes very important. So I said, all right, fantastic. He's in town. I said, well, let me leave him another note. Well, a couple of things were important about that day. You never know how God is going to bless you or bring you your breakthrough moment, and you don't know who that's going to be through. I had no idea who Tony Lang was. I later found out he was on the basketball team. He's from Alabama. He was an All-American kid. He was an All-American basketball player and an All-American kid. And you just never know who's watching what you do and how you do it. That's why you should always, first of all, treat people right. Secondly, do things with integrity and character, and always give it your best. And so I didn't know that he was going to be there when I went to try to meet Coach K. Well, eventually I went back another time. School was about to start. And I was like, you know what, if I don't catch up with him this time, school's starting, and I'll just come to games and be a fan, which would have been absolutely fine as well. Well, that fourth time I'm coming to meet him, and I parked the car up on this hill, and I'm rolling down the hill, and I see Coach K going into Cameron Indoor Stadium. That's where they play the games, and that's where the basketball office is. And I see him, and I start pushing my wheelchair, probably as fast as I ever have. Not sure, I don't know how I didn't fall out of my chair, but I was geeked up and I was hyped. I'm going to meet Coach K. So I raced down that hill, and I meet him at the door, and I put my hand out. I say, excuse me, Coach. And he said, oh, hey, David, I know who you are. I was hoping we could get a chance to meet. And, I was kind of speechless. I mean, he knows my name. You know how God knows our name. I mean, this guy knows my name. And that was great. So we go in and we have a conversation. And he says to me, you know what? We love to have you be a part of our program. I've learned some things about you, but we don't have anything that an official position for you this year. Are you willing to come to practice every day and just kind of learn what we do? And I said, absolutely, I will. And so for that first season, I didn't miss a practice. I was there early, stayed late, paid my way on some road trips, and got to see some great venues across the country. Year number 2 came, because it was a 2-year MBA program. And I went to see him, and he said, Dave, we love to have you in the program, but our graduate assistant position has been eliminated by the NCAA. If you're willing to be a manager, we'd love to have you as part of our program. And I said, absolutely. Took me about that long to decide. But let me tell you what a manager does. I'm 28 years old at that point. I'm getting an MBA from one of the top schools in the country. And a manager fills water bottles, runs down loose balls, wipes up the floor, and does laundry. That's what a manager does. I was excited to do that. Again, we're talking about perseverance and perspective here. I didn't see what I was doing as menial work. In fact, when many of my classmates asked me, what do you do with the basketball team? What's your roles and what's your responsibility? My response was, I'm helping them win championships. I said, what? I said, the things that I do each day is helping the Duke basketball team win championships. To others, it may have been making Gatorade, filling up water bottles, but that's not how I saw it. I saw it as an opportunity to contribute to a program and also to glean knowledge from arguably one of the greatest coaches of all times. Well, I didn't fill water bottles for long. Eventually, coach put me in and said, hey, you know a little bit about this game. So I said, thanks. He said, well, we want you to be a part of the practice plans and the coaching and film review and all those things that went along with that. And so what started off as something that seemed menial grew into something great. What's the lesson in that? Small beginnings, don't despise them. The scripture tells us that because they can lead to great things. And if you do great things with what you've been given, more can be given to you. And I'm living this out now. Well, the third thing I want to talk to you about today is the importance of partnerships. I am so grateful that I had people in my life, throughout my life, that have helped me on my journey from paralysis to purpose. It's comforting to know that you don't have to be on this journey by yourself. At the intersection of faith and partnership is the greatest partnership ever. When Jesus said, I will never leave you nor forsake you. I will never leave you alone. That's the greatest partnership you can have. And so I had strategic partnerships that helped me throughout my journey. Back when I was 17 years old, there were business people here in the city of Milwaukee. Some of the names you know, Jim Wigdell, Donald Shanky, Jack Puliker, Fred Stratton, Dennis Kester. They identified me as someone who they thought had an opportunity to be a leader and be successful in the business world. And they were able to help orchestrate me getting my first job when I was 17 years old as a lockbox clerk. Now, a lockbox clerk, man, I'm having trouble talking today, is someone, what I did was I filed checks and I did data entry, and I was actually processing insurance payments. Not glamorous, not exciting, but you know what it was? For a 17-year-old kid who 2 years prior to that had his world turned upside down, it was an opportunity for me to grow some self-esteem and some confidence. Always wanting to be in the banking business. And someone put me in position to be successful. You know, that's what leadership does. It's one of the things that leadership does. Those guys made sure at the M&I Bank that I was in a position to learn and to grow and to become successful. One of the things that I think a coach does, whether that's a business coach or an athletic coach, it identifies a person's skill set and then it positions them properly and provides them with the support that they need to be successful. That's what the bank did. So it's interesting. I started off my career in banking filing checks. So when Coach K asked me, would you be willing to be a manager, which meant filling water bottles, that wasn't a big deal to me because some 10, 11 years prior to that, I started off filing checks. I ended up being a commercial lender at the bank, which was my dream and my goal. And it all started because of strategic partnerships. You know, we live in a very difficult time right now. And I'm no exception for having experienced a very difficult year. Literally about a year ago today, I went to the emergency room because I thought I had the flu. It turned out to be sepsis. So I went in the hospital. I didn't know what sepsis was. I just said, let's do what we have to do. Well, I had a few setbacks. I had to have a surgery in January. And I was on bed rest for 120 days, like real bed rest, just in time for the middle of March to get off real bed rest for COVID-19. Well, I had been conditioned to be in the house, so that wasn't a big deal. But in the business that I do, which is public speaking, that was all dried up. I didn't know what was going to happen. I wasn't well physically, and it had been a tough journey to that point. Well, fast forward to August of this year, I was having an issue that had been with me for almost a year, apart from the sepsis, which was healing up fine. Had to have a surgery on that. That didn't go well. Had some problems with that, some setbacks, but now things are really good. Why do I tell you this? I said when I was 13 years old, I gave my life to Christ. I didn't anticipate being in a wheelchair 2 years later. I didn't anticipate the struggles that I was going to have in life. I didn't anticipate this last year where, none of us saw this thing coming. And before it hit, I'm already off the grid. But you know what? There's something about having faith in God that can get you through things that you think that you may not be able to get through. You know, I often tell people that your ability to endure something is always greater than your willingness to endure it. Let me say that again. Your ability to endure it is always greater than your willingness to endure it. What do I mean by that? If I had known 40 years ago in advance that I was going to have to deal with the things in life that I have had to deal with, it would have been overwhelming for me probably. And I would have wanted to do something else. Because you know what? None of us sign up for adversity. None of us sign up for difficulty. I did not sign up for this. I would have, if I could have had the option and I had a struggle to go through, this would not be the one. I wouldn't be willing to do that. But God has instilled in the human will the ability to do more than you could ever think. And you know what? That sounds like God, doesn't it? He is able to do exceeding abundantly above all you can ask or think. And he created us in his image. And so that ability that he puts in us to endure things is so much greater than our willingness to endure it. So in these difficult times, I'm here to encourage you. Take this moment to do some reflection. I had time to do a lot of it, more than I probably would have done otherwise. And the first thing I did was I celebrated myself. I talked to myself and I talked myself up. You're a good guy. You're a good gal. You know, whatever you do, celebrate some of your successes. And then I challenged myself. I said, where do I need to improve? Where can I get better? And third, I made a commitment to change some things. In this environment, this is about being prepared on the other side of paralysis. When you come from that and get to the place of purpose, are you prepared for what's next? Are you prepared for post-COVID, whenever that is? Are you prepared for the new economy? Are you prepared for which way the world is going? Technology is the new water. So I'm trying to get up to speed as much as I can on what's going with that. I say all that to say this. God has been good to me. He's been really, really good to me. And my relationship with Jesus Christ is the most important thing in my life. And that relationship has impacted my perspective remarkably, because I believe that God is in control and I'm going to be all right. I don't care what it looks like. I believe, and this is me, that if God has ever done it, he still does it. And he said he doesn't change. He changes not. And so my belief is that all things work together for my good. And I really believe that. What did I say when we first started? That one of the greatest things that God gave man was the ability to believe something, to attach faith to that. And faith can get you from paralysis to the fulfillment of your purpose. Secondly, perseverance. The Christian life is a journey. It's a walk. Whether it's in the marketplace, whether it's at the church, whether it's at home, it's a journey. And it's one that we must persevere and push through in the face of opposition. We just have to do it. And lastly, a lot of the New Testament deals with our relationship with believers as one, with one another. And that's what I love about the kingdom of God, is that you don't have to take this journey by yourself. You are able to establish partnerships. In the business setting, I do business coaching, and I talk to people about the importance of strategic partnerships. Knowing you don't just partner with anyone. Partner with someone that can help you move forward, that can help identify your blind spots, because we all have blind spots, but that's why we walk by faith and not by sight. So I hope that this short talk today left you inspired, left you challenged, but left you with hope, because with challenge comes victory. And ultimately, at the end of the day, we are here to fulfill the purpose that God has put us here for. And in doing that purpose, I sincerely believe that fulfilling your purpose includes serving others. And so make that commitment, even during these times of difficulty, of taking a moment and calling someone or texting someone, checking on someone that you meant to do for a while and it just keeps slipping and getting by you. Make today that day. Let's do that today. Now remember, we all get undressed. It's a rebranding, it's a starting over, and it's okay. I have bad days. Let me just put that out there. I don't always have great days. There are days that I don't feel like doing this, but I know I need to do it because there's people out here whose lives are depending on my life. There are people out in the world whose lives are depending on you. I encourage you to persevere. Make sure your perspective is right and get you some great people to help you along the way. This has been a blast for me, talking to C-Suite for Christ. I don't get to talk this way all the time in my keynote speeches, but when I get to, I try to hit a home run. May the blessing of the Lord be with you all today.